I've spent weeks searching for the best pro accessories for PS5. Today, I'm going to share which ones I think are worth buying or will actually improve your gaming experience.
Hey pals, welcome back. Whether it's a high-performance controller or a VR headset, accessories are the best way to get the most out of your PlayStation ownership. There's literally thousands of third-party options available. So to keep it simple, I've chosen a selection of products for this video, which are either made for PlayStation by Sony themselves, or have been officially licensed for PS5. All of these products are compatible with both the original PS5 and the new PS5 Slim, and I've left links to everything in the description if you wanted to check any of them out for yourself. There's been a bunch of new accessories released for the PS5 recently, and one of the most exciting is the PlayStation Portal, a remote play device which allows you to play your PS5 even when you're away from your TV. It goes without saying that this thing looks wicked. It has an 8-inch LCD touchscreen sandwiched between the familiar design of the Dualsense controller with these extra long LED accents which I think look really cool. One thing to keep in mind is that you can't play titles natively on the Portal, and you're effectively streaming your PS5, so a strong internet connection is required at all times. When you're using a decent Wi-Fi network, it's a really good experience. However, there is still a tiny bit of lag, so the Portal is best suited to more casual single-player games. Anything that requires fast reaction times with precise controls probably isn't going to be the best fit for remote play. I already know I'm going to be using the Portal to play a lot of story-driven games like God of War Ragnarok, Cyberpunk 2077, and eventually GTA 6 when it's released someday. After powering on the device, it takes about 20 seconds to boot up, connect to the PlayStation remotely, and then launch a game. I'd recommend turning off the device link features in the PS5's HDMI settings, otherwise you'll also turn on the connected TV or monitor in the other room, which is obviously a waste of power, or it's going to automatically change the input, which is a bit annoying for anyone else you're sharing the space with. The Portal has an 8-inch display, which should be big enough to read most text, and the 1080p resolution is more than enough pixels for a super sharp image at this size. It maxes out at 60 FPS, but that's not really an issue for the type of games you'll be playing on this, and the glossy screen is really punchy and vibrant. It's honestly one of the best LCD panels I've seen. The built-in speakers aren't great, but obviously there has to be some compromise on a device this compact. Much like the PS5, the Portal doesn't support Bluetooth connectivity, which is a glaring omission on a device specifically focused on flexible gaming. What's worse is that you can't even connect an adapter to the USB-C port. It doesn't allow data transfer of any kind, and you're limited to charging only. Inheriting the DualSense controller's design makes transitioning to this device feel really natural, and you get to enjoy all the same features like the excellent haptics and adaptive triggers. You'd expect the ergonomics to be pretty similar, but I found the wider grip just isn't as comfortable to use for extended periods of time, and after about 30 minutes my hands start to ache, especially when playing button-mashing titles like God of War. Hopefully this is just temporary and I'll get used to it over time, but I thought it was worth mentioning. I really like the PlayStation Portal, but being completely dedicated to remote play means the experience is only going to be worthwhile if you have a strong internet connection. This massively limits the potential of this device in transit, which is where portable consoles like the Nintendo Switch really shine. Also, there's currently no browser built into the UI, so you can't even connect to public Wi-Fi if they have some sort of verification page like you find on a plane or coffee shop, for example. You can play the Portal away from home. I took it to my parents and it was absolutely fine, but it's really been designed for quite a specific use case, like when your family or partner is using the TV you've hooked up to your PS5, or if you want to play games in other parts of your home like the bedroom or bathroom. No judgments, we've all done it. I think we were all hoping for a dedicated handheld console from Sony. However, if you evaluate the Portal strictly as a streaming device, then I'd say it still provides a great experience. It offers a premium solution for remote play, and I love the freedom it gives me to enjoy my games wherever I have a good Wi-Fi connection, with responsive performance and stunning visuals. Up next we have the Pulse Explore earbuds. Like I said earlier, the PS5 doesn't have Bluetooth built in natively, so if you want to use headphones you either have to plug into the 3.5mm jack on the controller, or connect a Bluetooth adapter. So the main difference these headphones offer is that they make use of a proprietary wireless technology called PlayStation Link, which works on a 2.4 GHz connection. This allows you to connect wirelessly with basically zero latency, and stream higher quality lossless audio. Sounds great in theory, but how do they actually sound? I'm no audio engineer, but I started dipping my toes into high fidelity sound this year, and I'm slowly developing an ear for what to listen out for when reviewing premium audio products. The Pulse Explore's planar magnetic drivers deliver quite an exciting sound profile. They're pretty decent on the low end, producing controlled and punchy bass which can actually sound really pleasing. However, this doesn't extend to the highs and mids, which aren't very pronounced, meaning the mix can feel quite muddy when listening to more complex audio. Adjusting the EQ can sometimes help to improve separation. However, there's currently no way of accessing this, either through the console settings or via the PlayStation app, so I'd like to see this addressed in a future firmware update. Also, I spent a fair bit of time switching between PlayStation Link and a Bluetooth connection to my phone, so I just wanted to say that I personally couldn't pick out any significant improvement while using Sony's proprietary wireless standard, either in terms of audio quality or signal strength. I know they're made for gaming, but these might not be the most versatile option if you are thinking about using these as your daily drivers. Many of the features typically found on headphones at this price point, such as active noise cancelling, are just absent. There's also no ear detection sensors, so when you take them out, they don't automatically pause. and they'll just stay powered on until they eventually run out of battery. No ANC is obviously a shame, however the sound isolation is pretty good if you can get a good seal using one of the included pairs of silicone tips. I'm pretty lucky in that most earbuds fit me pretty well, but your experience will really depend on the shape of your ears. That being said, I would highly recommend changing the tips out for something else. The ones included have a really awkward shape, which compromises both how well they can seal to your ear canal and overall comfort while wearing them for extended periods of time. Fortunately, it's super easy to swap these out for a different set, which solved both of these issues for me. Also, one of the things I wanted to mention is that switching these earbuds between the PS5 and the Portal is a bit clunky. Basically, you have to re-pair the Pulse Explore every time you switch, so that means holding the link button on the case for 8 seconds to connect to the Portal, and then if you're reconnecting to the PS5 later, you have to push the button on the USB adapter first, before pressing one of the link buttons on the earbuds themselves. Obviously this isn't very convenient, especially if like me you're plugging the adapter into one of the console's rear ports, because you need the front USB available for other devices. So yeah, not the best experience. I was really excited for a pair of premium earbuds specifically focused on providing the best wireless experience for PS5, but unfortunately these have been a bit of a letdown. They solve a problem that Sony themselves have created, and I expected a lot more at this price point, both in terms of sound quality and features. I'd probably say to give these a miss, but since they're the only option for a fully wireless experience on the Portal, you might not have any other choice. That being said, if you don't mind using wired headphones, you can get a really nice pair for a much lower price. I've been using this pair of earbuds for years and they've never let me down. I've always been a fan of the PS5 controller, so an upgraded version is a really exciting concept. This is the Dualsense Edge, a more refined version of the original aimed at power users who want more customization and control over their inputs. It comes included with a really nice carrying case, which contains a bunch of extra accessories, which I'll come back to in a minute. Looking at the controller itself, it has a very similar design to the original DualSense with a couple of minor differences. The most obvious of these being a pair of function buttons attached to the bottom, which allow you to adjust volume and switch control profiles on the fly without having to interrupt your game to dive into the settings. The DualSense Edge also has these adjustable sliders for setting the travel distance of your L2 and R2 triggers, which can be helpful depending on whether you need to be more responsive rather than precise. The only other significant changes include removable stick modules, which can be easily switched out if there's an issue instead of having to replace the entire controller. Additionally, there are pins on either side of the USB-C port for the lockable connector housing, which ensures the cable stays plugged in during critical moments. So on the back of the controller there's 2 slots for inserting mappable back buttons. These are ideal for when you want to keep your thumbs glued to the joysticks for better movement in FPS shooters, or third-person games when you're constantly moving the camera around. There's a choice between paddle levers or half-dome buttons included in the carrying case, and they use magnets to snap into place so you can easily mix and match these to suit your style of play. There's also a couple of interchangeable thumbsticks which include tall and short dome style options, which reminded me a bit of the PlayStation 3 controller. I tried both of these out, but I think I'm just used to the DualSense controller at this point, so I ended up going back to the standard style pretty quickly. One of my biggest gripes with the DualSense controller is the battery life, so I was really hoping to see an improvement on the Edge. Annoyingly, it uses a 1050 mAh battery, which is actually smaller than the original, and only gives you about 5 to 8 hours of play depending on which lighting effects and haptics are being used. I was glad to see that the Edge does fit on the official charging dock, so you'll just have to make sure you're religious about plugging it in after your gaming session. When you first connect the DualSense Edge, there's a quick walkthrough of all the main features, which introduces you to control profiles and allows you to set your back buttons. Diving into the software settings unlocks a number of additional pro features which aren't available on the standard DualSense, like being able to adjust the trigger dead zone and stick sensitivity curves, along with fine-tuning your vibration intensity. I understand why these would be reserved for the Pro controller, but knowing these are available behind a paywall is a bit of a bummer. Speaking of price, I probably would have guessed a 50 to 75% increase for the hardware upgrades and included accessories, but the fact this controller costs 4 times more than the DualSense is a bit ridiculous. I can see high-level players and FPS enthusiasts getting a lot of use out of some features, but considering most of the Edge's benefits are software-based, and given that it doesn't even address one of the very few issues I have with the DualSense controller, I don't think this is a good purchase for most people. You really can't beat the convenience of a handheld controller, but sometimes more specialized peripherals are better for certain games where precision and performance really matter. This is the Logitech Pro Wheel and Pedals, a direct drive system which provides an infinitely more realistic and immersive driving experience. This is a massive upgrade from the entry-level racing wheel I was using previously. The construction and materials are far more premium, and the direct drive motor is capable of producing 11 Nm of torque, offering an experience much closer to driving a real car than the gear-driven system of the G29. The Pro Wheel makes use of True Force technology, which pulls data from the game's physics engine, then translates this into more detailed vibrations to simulate things like engine response and various track surfaces. I know it's not for everyone, but I personally enjoy the effect, and I found it made a big difference to my overall immersion. The gear paddles use a magnetic system with contactless Hall effect sensors, which actually do a really good job of simulating a mechanical response. They're super tactile and shifting gears feels really satisfying, but they are quite loud, so you might get some complaints if you're sharing the space. The wheel connects via a quick release system to this absolute unit of a wheelbase, which suggests there could be more options like a Formula style wheel on the way. However, there hasn't been any updates on this or a roadmap of future products so far. The ecosystem for the Pro Wheel is quite limited compared to other brands. There still isn't an official option for a gear shifter or handbrake, for example, which is strange considering it's been over a year since Logitech released this product. I've seen a bit of chatter online from people expressing their dismay about this, but Logitech's head of simulation and controllers recently chimed in to say, "We're working on a number of exciting projects and we'll reveal more once they're ready." So there could be some movement on this soon. Anyway, back to the wheelbase. You can change the settings using this tiny OLED screen, which gives you the option to adjust things like force feedback strength and brake pressure to suit your preferences. I found that 9 Nm was enough for most situations, but for certain races like the Super Formula series in Gran Turismo 7, I whacked it up to the max torque to better match the car. The pedals have a pretty big focus on customization too. They're fully modular, so you can move them around for better spacing, and swapping the springs and elastomers allows you to fine-tune the amount of resistance and travel. It's using a load cell brake, which responds to the amount of force used rather than just the distance it travels, which is a lot more accurate and can help you to be more consistent on each lap. It's capable of up to 100 kilograms of pressure, although I only have it set to 45%, which is as much as I can comfortably handle without having to wear shoes. There's a night and day difference between the Pro Wheel and pedals compared to the entry-level G29. Everything feels a lot smoother, and I think this system looks incredible, especially when paired with this Logitech G branded playseat trophy. The cohesive colour scheme and striking design with this brushed aluminium looks unreal. I really love this thing. But here's the kicker, the Pro Wheel and pedals have a combined price of well over £1,000. Sim racing is an expensive hobby, but that's a monstrous jump from the G29, and there are plenty of other direct drive options which provide a pretty comparable experience at a much more palatable price. All that is to say, if you have the money and you're okay with buying into a limited ecosystem, the Logitech G Pro Wheel and pedals have been so much fun to use, and using dedicated peripherals really provides the most immersive experience for driving games on the PS5. Speaking of immersive, up next we have the PSVR 2. The virtual reality landscape has matured a lot since this device was released, so I was curious to know how it holds up as we enter 2024. If I'm being completely transparent, I didn't really have time to do much research on PSVR 2, so I was surprised to learn there's not really that many first-party titles available. At the very least, I was hoping for some sort of demo game like Astro's Playroom that would show off some of the hardware capabilities, but I was a bit disappointed to see that the game catalogue is mostly made up of indie titles, and aside from a small handful of games, my interest was pretty limited. Playing some of the VR classics like Beat Saber and Cooking Simulator is always a good time, but personally I think PSVR 2 really shines when playing Gran Turismo 7. It transforms the experience, and I've had so much fun playing this game in VR. I was able to match my lap times pretty quickly, and despite my concerns about motion sickness, I found that I only had a bit of wobbliness during my first couple of sessions, which gradually improved after spending more time in VR. So this headset uses a pair of OLED displays which produce a resolution of 2000 by 2040 pixels per eye. Combined with these Fresnel lenses, it gives us a field of view of 110 degrees, and the image clarity is really good. There's a really small sweet spot which you have to line up your eyes with, so there's a lot of adjusting and fiddling which can be a bit annoying the first few times you use it, but it definitely gets easier as you become more familiar with the headset. In regards to comfort, I don't really have any complaints about the weight or ergonomics, but I wish the cushioning was fabric rather than this plastic material. I tend to sweat a lot under the contact points, which makes the lenses fog up at times, and it's also just a bit cheap feeling and not the easiest to clean, so there's definitely room for improvement here. PSVR 2 uses a tethered connection, so you'll be permanently plugged in via the extra long USB-C cable, but this trade-off is more than okay for how good the visuals are in return. A native 4K resolution with high frame rates definitely helps trick your brain into believing what it's seeing, and using OLED displays means we're treated to punchy colours with excellent contrast in HDR, which does a really good job of simulating the brightness of headlights when driving at night, or enjoying a dramatic sunset while kayaking through Antarctica. The extra processing required for these improved visuals is partially helped by foveated rendering, which uses the eye tracking features to determine where you're looking and increases the graphical fidelity in those specific areas. I was really impressed by how responsive it is. I could not tell this was happening while wearing the headset. It's only after watching the gameplay captures that I can now see how obvious it was. When PSVR 2 was first announced, I remember seeing a lot of comments complaining about the price, specifically because it costs more than the console required to use it. Now that I've experienced it for myself, I can honestly say that this device far exceeded my expectations, and I actually think it's incredible value for a high-end VR experience. I've dipped my toes into virtual reality in the past, but those experiences never felt user-friendly, and it was difficult to imagine a world where this technology would feel integrated within our daily routines. PSVR 2's minimal setup and stunning visuals has made me way more excited about the future of mixed reality beyond gaming, and I'd even go as far to say that it's a must-buy for PS5 owners. Trying out a bunch of new VR games was super fun, but there's nothing worse than realizing that you've already used all your console's internal storage, and you're going to have to make some tough decisions before you can download and play another title. Luckily, you can expand your internal storage up to an extra 8 TB by installing an M.2 SSD. This is an officially licensed drive from Western Digital, and out of all the products in this video, this is the one I think everyone with a PS5 should buy. You can get cheaper SSDs, but this one has really fast read and write speeds and also comes with a heatsink pre-installed. I also just really like Western Digital. I use their hard drives for backing up all my creative projects, and I've already bought one of these SSDs, although I got mine before they were officially licensed for PS5. I know they're quite expensive, but I'd recommend getting the biggest capacity you can afford. I bought the 1TB version shortly after I got my PS5, and it didn't take long to fill it up, especially since games seem to be getting bigger every year. They're super easy to install. You just need to remove the right hand side panel and you'll see this metal cover on the SSD bay, which you can remove using a small screwdriver. Insert the SSD into the expansion slot by pushing the pins in first, then gently press down on the other side. Once you screwed it into place, just reattach the metal cover and side panel, and the next time you turn on your PS5, you'll be asked if you want to format the SSD. Just follow the on-screen instructions and that's pretty much it. Really simple upgrade. I know the PS5 probably should have come with more storage, but I do think the M.2 expansion is worth it. Based on my experience, I'd recommend the 2TB version for most people, but if you're a bit of a power user, or if you play Call of Duty, then you might be better off getting a higher capacity. If you're on a limited budget, then the 1TB version is definitely better than nothing, but just keep in mind you'll probably fill it up sooner than you think. One of the biggest improvements from this generation of consoles is the ability to output video at a higher frame rate for smoother gameplay. This is made possible through graphical improvements, but also by the inclusion of an HDMI 2.1 port, which allows you to play games in 4K resolution with up to 120 frames per second, effectively double what the PS4 was capable of. There's an ultra high speed cable included with the PS5, but it's a bit short, especially if you've got a larger TV. So I found this officially licensed option from PowerA, which is 10 feet long and has slimmer connectors, so I think it's a much better option. Obviously, you'll also need a screen capable of delivering high frame rates. So up next we have the Inzone M9, a gaming monitor made by Sony with features specifically included to improve the PS5 experience. Coming from a 32-inch display on my desk setup, I was a bit worried that 27 inches would feel small, but it's actually perfectly usable and might even benefit some competitive games where you need all the visual information at the center of your field of view. This monitor performs particularly well when it comes to detail and contrast. A 4K display at this size looks super sharp and it has full array local dimming from 96 zones, producing responsive and accurate backlighting for convincing HDR gameplay. It's using an IPS panel, so you won't achieve the deep blacks you'd see on an OLED or mini LED, but I was still really impressed by this monitor's performance. And combined with its high refresh rate, the Inzone M9 allows you to experience the full potential of the PS5's graphical fidelity. When this monitor was first released, one of the biggest criticisms from reviewers was its unique stand, which has obviously been designed with the PS5 aesthetic in mind. I have to be honest, I actually don't mind it too much. I think the design is quite cool, and I think Sony deserves some credit for trying something different, but I do agree that it's not the most practical. Adjustments are limited to height and tilt only, and it wobbles way more than it should for the limited flexibility it offers. The other common complaint is that the M9 is really thick, which I wouldn't mind if this monitor had a built-in power supply, but it still has an enormous power break, which is really frustrating to see and makes cable management a lot more effort. Weirdly, there aren't any other cables included with the M9, so you'll need to supply these yourself, which is pretty mad for a monitor at this price. Like most monitors with built-in speakers, they're super basic and sound pretty bad. Not really a problem if you prefer wearing headphones, but definitely worth mentioning. Also, I know this video is mostly focused on gaming, but I just wanted to quickly say that this might be a good option for those who also want to use their monitor for productivity. The Inzone M9 has a wide range of I/O, including multiple HDMI 2.1 ports, DisplayPort 1.4 and DisplayPort via USB-C, meaning you can connect to a laptop using a single cable for data pass-through and power delivery. Even though it's only capable of 15 watts of charging, I found this was enough to slowly charge my MacBook whilst docked, which is actually sufficient for my needs. In summary, the Inzone M9 is a decent first attempt from Sony, but it's hard to recommend it when there are so many other options available with comparable specs at a lower cost. Here in the UK, the M9 has stayed the same price since release, which puts it in contention with some 42-inch OLED TVs, and honestly, they might be a better purchase, especially since they're now including a lot of features typically reserved for gaming monitors in the past. I was also really impressed by the Samsung Odyssey Neo G8, which I tested recently for my PS5 Slim review, and I think it's a better overall choice for gaming at a desk. The stand has a much better design and its curved 32-inch mini LED display beats a lot of the M9 specs and wraps around you for a more immersive experience. If you made it to the end of this video, then let me know in the comments which of these accessories you want to try out for yourself, or check out my review of the PS5 Slim which came out not too long ago. Otherwise, thanks for watching, I'll see you on the next one.